Midwest City, Oklahoma City, and streaming audio at KTLV1220.com.
This is Oklahoma Voice with Jonathan Clour on KTLV 1220.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Oklahoma Voice. I'm Jonathan Clour. Tonight on the program, we have State Representative Paul Wesselhoft joining us. He is retiring from the Oklahoma legislature and will be on to discuss his tenure in office. I want to remind everyone that tomorrow night, we will have Oklahoma State House candidate Jason Sansone on the show to weigh in on the issues. Also, we will have Justin Wright and Jonathan McLinn on from ThunderOpEd.com to give us our weekly Thunder basketball report and sports analysis. Now I'd like to welcome our guest for the evening, Representative Paul Wesselhoft. Representative, welcome to Oklahoma Voice.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's good to be with you tonight.
I'm thrilled that you made time in your busy schedule to weigh in on the issues.
Sure, you bet.
And I believe that you will be retiring soon. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm in my 11th year. In Oklahoma, of course, we have term limits, so this will be my last session coming up in January.
I see. For our listeners that do not know about our term limits, could you shed some light on that?
Well, for the legislature, we are termed for 12 years. That's all we can serve, and it can be a combination both in the House and the Senate, but it cannot exceed 12 years. We passed that about, I guess, a year before I was elected, and I was very supportive of it. Frankly, I probably wouldn't be a representative without term limits. It gives people a great opportunity, and so I support it. I wish we had it on a national level. I would recommend that we have a U.S. congressman term limited to maybe 16 years. Mm-hmm. And I think that would serve the nation well.
And I believe you had a piece of legislation, or you had proposed the idea that we extend the term limits just by a hair here in Oklahoma?
Yes, that's correct. I did have that legislation. It wasn't well received, but that happens sometimes. Sometimes you have a popular bill, and sometimes you have a controversial bill, and that bill did not get very much support.
Do you know the reasons why? I mean, were the folks afraid to vote for it because they were fearing that their districts might be in an uproar?
Well, it probably goes back all the way to the history of Oklahoma. You know, we the people that put the Constitution together for Oklahoma, they really didn't trust the government, and Oklahoma is famous for that. Matter of fact, sometimes I don't trust my government. My government disappoints me a lot. Mm-hmm. But I think that might be part of it. And then the other thing is we just passed this, several years ago. So maybe people want to see it play out a little bit longer. Unfortunately, I think we lose some really good, talented people because of term limits. But as I said, I think it's still a good thing to do. I think it gives a lot of younger people an opportunity to run for office because, quite frankly, it's virtually impossible to win against an incumbent when they have so much advantage, especially with financial lobbyists giving money.
That's right. And I believe when the term limits were enacted, wasn't it the Republicans that had implemented that?
Yes, that's true. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Well, and a lot of folks, they support these term limits because, it does a lot of good. It allows other people a chance to step up and to be able to represent their people. But, there, to every good thing, there is a downside. And the one downside is that we lose a lot of folks that are tenured in the legislature, that have that many years of experience. And frankly, sometimes it does take about 12 years to learn your responsibilities and to be able to implement your responsibilities thoroughly.
Well, that's correct, and it lends more power and authority to the lobbyists that are there for decades, and also the rest of the government that's in place. So it really kind of puts the legislature at a disadvantage. So yes, there is a cost. That's why I believe that the term limit should be extended probably to 16 years.
Okay, 16 years. And I believe it's the representatives that are elected every 2 years, and it's the senators that are elected every 4 years, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Well, tell us about your district that you represent.
Well, I represent Moore in southeast Oklahoma City, which is arguably the most conservative part of the state. I really believe that, and my record reflects that. So the people, my constituents, appreciate the fact that I've been a constitutional conservative, and I'm probably in the top 3 or 4 legislators on the conservative index, and I think that they're very pleased with that. Hopefully, whoever replaces me will continue that tradition, because I picked it up all the way from Mrs. Helen Cole. She was kind of a pioneer in Moore. She was one of the very few Republicans that even breathed air in Moore. And now, of course, we have the majority.
Uh-huh. And some of our listeners might not even know that our legislators are ranked by percentages in terms of how conservative they are and how liberal they are. And I believe you received a 93% or a 96%?
Yeah, that's correct. I've always maintained in the top 2 or 3 most conservative legislators.
Uh-huh. Do you think that this ranking is important?
I do. Sometimes I disagree with maybe 1 or 2 of the bills that they have. But, you know, it comes with the territory. There's not a perfect system. So, but it does, put a light on some of our legislators who campaign as conservatives, but they get down there and they become moderates very quickly. And that index kind of focuses attention on them and lets the constituents know that the guy or the gal that campaigned at your door, well, guess what? That person's not quite as conservative as they were campaigning.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Entering office, do you have a completely different perspective leaving the legislature than you did, entering it 12 years ago?
Yes, somewhat. It's amazing that most of my colleagues are highly respected. I like them. I don't have any enemies, both on the Democrat and Republican side of the aisle. So that's been good. Sometimes I'm disappointed when politics trumps policy, and that happens a lot. And I've been frustrated, with some of the speakers and some of the budgets blooming and the debt that we are giving our grandchildren. Some of the bonds that we have right now won't even be paid off until I'm in my 90s. So yeah, it's the good and the bad, but overall it's been a very wonderful experience, and it's given me an opportunity to really not only experience passing good bills and championing bills and writing good bills, but I've also used the platform as a political activist, which doesn't necessarily come with a job, but I was a political activist before I was elected, and I'll remain so. And so there's a number of issues that I champion, one of which is trying to get the stolen art at OU returned to the family, because that art was stolen by the Nazis in World War II. That's one of the things that I champion. I'm a strong advocate of Rose Day and have been on the Rose Day committee for many, many years, trying to protect unborn life. I've been a champion for the disabled community. I've gotten bills passed that strengthen fines for people parking in handicapped places when they're not supposed to, and other issues. I've been able to really be a political activist for those. And quite frankly, when I term out, I will probably lose that authority.
Wow, that's eye-opening. Well, and you've touched on a few topics that I'm wanting to cover this evening later in the show. But before we do, I'd like to talk a little bit about your background. I know that you have served in the military. I believe that you've also served as a chaplain and or a pastor as well. And you're a professor, a teacher. So tell us a little bit about your careers and how you have led up to the point that you're at today.
Well, that's true. I retired from the Army in 1995. I served during the Persian Gulf War. I was a chaplain for 18 years. I have some enlisted time as well during the Vietnam era. I actually volunteered to be drafted in 1967 and spent 2 years as an enlisted person, became a sergeant. And so I retired in 1995. I guess the highlight of that military career was obviously serving our soldiers from Fort Sill in the First Persian Gulf War. We liberated Kuwait and saved Saudi Arabia from being invaded by Saddam Hussein. He wanted the oil down there, and we kept that from happening. And I also served one tour as an airborne ranger, and that was quite a challenge because I wasn't one of the youngest ones in the battalion. I was actually in my late 30s, early 40s in that time period, but I had to keep up with all the 20-year-olds. And I was able to do that, and that became really a highlight of my military career. But in 95, I retired, and then I worked for the Oklahoma Department of Health, Oklahoma State Department of Health, and I was director of a federal grant to try to bring down the unwed teen birth rate and the STD rate in Oklahoma. We were able to do that by teaching abstinence education in hundreds and hundreds of schools throughout the state of Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. So I did that for 7 years.
Was that well received?
Yes, it was. It's no longer a force, unfortunately, in the Obama administration. Uh-huh. But in the former administration, we were able to really make some accomplishments there. And so, and we did bring down the unwed teen birth rate, but now it has shot back up. Uh-huh. But I did that for 7 years, and then open seat because of term limits. I had an opportunity to run and get elected, and now I've served 11 years. And currently, Jonathan, I'm applying to 6 universities throughout the nation. I want to get a Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing because I have a number of manuscripts I want to turn into books. I've been writing creatively since I was 15, poetry and essays and fiction, short stories, plays, and things like that.
Well, that's fascinating. Are you going to move, or are you just going to take it at home?
One of the universities is Oklahoma State University. If I get accepted there, they have a good MFA program. I will probably commute from Moore to that institution. The other 5 are throughout the United States, so yes, I would have to move.
Wow.
One is Stanford, University of Iowa, Brown, Cornell, and Columbia. So that will involve me moving for 2 years to be a student there.
Well, I bet that's a bit of information that a lot of people probably didn't even know.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you shared that with us, and we're going to be wishing you the best on that. That's going to keep you busy.
Thank you.
Well, with your military background, share with us your thoughts on Syria, and is this our war?
Oh, I've got so many mixed feelings about that. In my gut, I don't want to see any American blood shed for these countries. They're tribal in nature. They've been warring against each other for generations. They will continue to war against each other for generations to come. Mm-hmm. So I'm hesitant for us to put a large number of troops on the battlefield. Now, we can do strikes, we can do special operations. Like I said, I was in the Ranger Battalion, so I know how special operations work. Then they're pretty skilled. They can get in and out. But having troops there for a prolonged period of time, we're going to lose a lot of American young boys and girls, women and men. And I'm really reluctant to do that in large numbers. But, of course, we can rely on the Air Force and drones and other means. So we've got to fight terrorism. But, Jonathan, I hesitate to put in a mass of our soldiers on the ground right now.
Yeah. And I think, the average person will look at this situation and obviously not knowing nearly the knowledge that you have. And I believe that they just look at this situation. They see that it's just going to be an ongoing war. There's just no end to it.
Well, it really isn't. I mean, for anyone that's watched the movie Lawrence of Arabia, I believe the theme of that movie was basically these are a tribal people. They think tribally. They will never be a great people as far as a united people because they war against each other. And you can see that the Sunnis and Shias are fighting against each other, and then other tribal leaders. So I don't think that they'll ever be united, which is really a benefit to us, because if they were united, they might even be a more fearful force. But I just hesitate to lose young American blood on behalf of countries that are going to continue to kill each other.
Yeah, I agree on that. And how about the Syrian refugees? How should we handle that?
I think that we ought to have a fail-proof kind of system. I mean, obviously that's easy to say. It may be harder to implement, but we've got to really screen those people. And I wouldn't be bothered by a moratorium on all immigrants coming into the country. I don't support Mr. Trump and his, excluding all Muslims. I think that was a misplaced statement.
Yeah, that was my next question. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, but I think if you had a moratorium on all immigrants, that would be okay. Or even if Mr. Trump would have said we ought to halt in immigration to countries A, B, and C, that would have been okay. But no, he had to say all Muslims.
Right.
That's really not who we are as Americans.
Sometimes I really wonder if he truly believes that, or if he's just saying that to stir the pot.
Well, it could be. There's obviously a pattern of a candidate here that speaks before he thinks. And that really alarms me, because he's potentially going to be our commander-in-chief. Mm-hmm. And I became politically aware during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Up to that point, I never even read a newspaper. But the Cuban Missile Crisis made this whole thing become real to me. And I remember during that time how delicate the dialogue was between John F. Kennedy and Khrushchev. I mean, we almost blew up the world back in that crisis. And so you got to really you have to have precise language. You have to know what you're saying. You have to be well advised by your colleagues. And unfortunately, I just don't see that trait that Mr. Trump displays. He's got a lot of other great talents, but you've got to think before you speak. And as a commander-in-chief, if you don't do that, you can get us in a big war really quick.
Yes, and it goes kind of back to the biblical scripture that says that you need to have reins on your tongue.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a perfect scripture for Mr. Trump.
maybe he hadn't read that one yet. We'll have to email that to him.
I don't think so, but I bet you Ted Cruz and Rubio and the others are aware of that, and Ben Carson.
Yeah. Well, I want to catch our listeners up that might be just now tuning in. We are with State Representative Paul Wesselhoft. We are talking a little bit about his legislation and his tenure in the Oklahoma House of Representatives. This is his 11th year serving Oklahoma in the legislature, and he is terming out after 12 years. And so we're asking him a few of these hot-button questions, and we're getting his response. Shifting gears a little bit, Representative Wesselhoft, how about your thoughts on the San Bernardino tragedy? I want to note that President Obama immediately addressed the public and pushed for tighter gun control and to outlaw the guns that were used in the San Bernardino tragedy. Will this effort be effective, or is it just another erosion of our Second Amendment right?
The latter.
Okay.
Yeah, the gun control, this is not a gun issue. This is a human heart issue, and this has been an issue with us from the time of Cain and Abel. If you don't have a gun to kill somebody, you'll take a bone from an ox and knock someone on the head. It doesn't matter. If you're going to kill somebody, you're going to kill somebody. And there's always going to be a way to find means to do that. Mm-hmm. And what I'm really fearful is the development of this. What happens when they don't use rifles? What happens when they use some kind of a dirty bomb or a chemical agent? I think that we have a lot to really be concerned about. But I'm a strong believer in the Second Amendment, and I'm a concealed carry person. I keep myself armed virtually all the time. Mm-hmm. And if I'm sleeping in bed, I have an arm that's within my reach. So I'm glad I don't tumble in my sleep. be a little dangerous. But yes, I'm a strong amendment person, and I just don't think that the San Bernardino situation calls for any restrictions of guns.
I see. Well, if you look back at history, you see that these gun control resolutions and ideas and proposals tend to come from one side of the aisle over the other. Why does this side want to enact gun control?
That's a good question, Jonathan. I mean, we could ask that, about the pro-life issue and the pro-choice issue and a number of other issues. Government as big brother or government being restricted. It's just that the Republicans and Democrats have, through the years, become more and more divided, and that's just an issue that the Democrats believe that is popular with young people, and so they will cling to those issues, whereas the Republicans believe that the Second Amendment really supports the baby boomer generation and even the generation before that went through World War II, that, we believe in having the right to hunt, and guns is part of that culture, and it's just part of being America. And so the Republicans have latched onto that, and that's just the way it's become. It's a very divisive issue, but I really feel that I'm on the right side of that issue, and I'll continue to support the Second Amendment.
Well, I know our listeners thank you for supporting our Second Amendment, and that's what sets our nation apart from many of the other nations. And I was visiting with Senator A.J. Griffin the other night. She was a guest on our program, and we were bringing up the fact that the Japanese would have invaded and wanted to invade on our land, but they were afraid because our citizens are an armed people.
Jonathan, there will never be a successful invasion of the United States by any kind of a mass of army because everyone is armed. If they're going to bring down America, they'll have to do it internally or with nuclear bombs or some other means. But an invasion will never succeed in North America because you're right. We are armed. We are ready for them. And I would be one of them. I'd be on top of my roof with my 30-06.
Representative Wesselhoft, we're going to pause for just a few moments to remind our listeners how to tune into our program. And you can tune in live using the TuneIn Radio app. If you don't have it already downloaded to your phone, I want to remind you that it is 100% free. Simply go to your App Store selection on your phone, tablet, computer, or smart device and enter TuneIn Radio into the selection bar, and then click Download. After you have it installed on your device, open the app, find the search bar at the top of your screen, and enter KTLV. You'll find it at the top of your list. Select KTLV and then push play. Or we have another option to gain access to Oklahoma Voice, and that is by live streaming at KTLV.com. We've also created a channel on YouTube where you can rewatch any shows that you might have missed, and that is at Oklahoma Voice with Jonathan Clour. These are all recorded by webcam and downloaded the evening of the show, so if you really want to see what's going on in the studios during the broadcast, we suggest that you visit our YouTube channel. Folks, we're visiting with Representative Paul Wesselhoft, and we just got through chatting about the Second Amendment and how important it is to continue to bolster our Second Amendment right. Representative, this year, thousands of people across our state were shocked by the removal of our Ten Commandments statue on the Capitol grounds. Do you support the statue residing on Capitol grounds?
Well, of course I do, because it has a historical significance. It's not so much that it's a religious symbol as a historical symbol. It undergirds all of our laws. All of our Western ideas are based on the Ten Commandments. So I can't think of anything more significant to have at a Capitol than the statue of the Ten Commandments. And matter of fact, that same statue ought to be at our Supreme Court as well, our Oklahoma Supreme Court. So we really need two of these statues.
Okay. Well, and I believe one of our legislators offered a piece of legislation to try to get the Ten Commandments back on the grounds. If our listeners are wanting to know how can we get the Ten Commandments back on the property of the Capitol?
Well, obviously, contact your legislator, whether it be a senator or a representative. Email them, send them a postcard, and tell them that that's what you want to see happen. Because we've got to galvanize that movement, and hopefully this bill will succeed. And hopefully it'll get a hearing. Some of our good bills never get a hearing. Myself and Jason Murphy are two representatives that hear every bill that comes into our committee as a chairman. But some chairmen will not even hear a bill. So hopefully we can galvanize this and get it heard and get it passed.
Does this speak to the progression that the human race is moving in, removing the Ten Commandments from the Capitol grounds? I would say our ancestors would look at this and they would be rolling over in their graves, having heard the news.
Not only our ancestors, but even the generation, I referenced JFK earlier, even that generation would be shocked by the Democrat Party today and what they're trying to do. And the Democratic Party is, for the most part, has been supportive of removing these religious symbols. They want to secularize the United States, and so it's not just our ancient ancestors. Even in the 20th century, people wouldn't even recognize what's happening in this 21st century. And at some point, you continue to go down this secular path, you jeopardize the blessings that God is giving you as a nation, and that really worries me.
What are the ramifications of this? I mean, what will begin to happen if we're pulling apart from our historic principles and the founding of this nation? What will happen in government? What will the ramifications be?
Well, one of the ramifications is that we will eschew the U.S. Constitution. You see this with a lot of executive orders from President Obama, and they go around the U.S. Constitution. It no longer has the esteem it was once held in, and I think that's part of this secular movement. But the other thing is, I really believe that God blesses a nation that gives to missionaries, that has revivals. I believe that God blesses a nation that blesses and supports the state of Israel. And so that's why I've always been a strong proponent of supporting Israel, because I know that God will bless us for doing that. But again, if we continue to become a secular nation, I think that we are jeopardizing God's blessing. At some point in time, we know from history that He removes His blessed hand from a nation. And when that happens, it's not that He's cursing the nation. It's just that He's no longer blessing that nation. That nation's on their own. And when that happens, we see civilizations fall.
Interesting. We're going to shift gears one more time, Representative, because we have, a few more minutes left. But I wanted to go over a few pieces of your legislation that you have either proposed or passed. And one of the pieces of legislation that I believe that is related back to you is the Westboro Baptist Church legislation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I was the first one, maybe even in the country, to pass a bill that restricted this so-called church, the Westboro Baptist Church, from interfering in our funerals. And that's what they were doing. They were getting so close and making such loud noise and calling people names, ugly names, that it really hindered the grief process that's so important to be accomplished at a funeral. And so I passed the first bill that restricted them a long distance. And since that time, other people have added to that bill and made it even further. We're not taking away their First Amendment right to protest. We're just saying don't get up in the face of people who are grieving. And it's such an ugly thing that they do. But again, we have to protect the First Amendment. So, yeah, that was one of my early bills.
Hmm. Yeah, well, if you know anything about Westboro Baptist Church, you see that their protests, I just don't think they're effective at all, and it's not wholesome, and it doesn't look good on them at all, nor no Christian Baptist for that matter.
Yeah,
I,
they've been counterproductive.
yeah, they really have. Another topic I wanted to bring up is pit bulls in Oklahoma. I
Yeah.
was, just before going on, I was chatting, and then someone brought up pit bulls. Where's your stance on that?
Yeah, I proposed some pit bull legislation early on. Unfortunately, I didn't get it passed because the lobbyists came against me. The Veterinarians Association, the Humane Society, the Dog Breeders of America. I mean, I could go on and on.
Mm.
They inundated my colleagues with emails and letters and phone calls, and so therefore my bill was not able to succeed. But what has happened, because I caused such a ruckus on so many television stations and radio stations and newspapers, that all the city councils, virtually all of them throughout Oklahoma, started passing their own ordinances to strengthen laws against animals that go wild and maim and kill people. But yes, pit bulls. There's hardly a week that goes by that someone in America is not killed by a pit bull, and it's usually a child or an elderly person.
Well, that's staggering. So it wouldn't remove pit bulls completely. It's it would tighten down their freedoms.
Yeah, because right now what we have in place is the first bite is free. In other words, if you get attacked tonight by a pit bull, well, that pit bull was not adjudicated as a vicious animal, so therefore it's just a misdemeanor. But if we had stronger legislation passed, then we could protect people, and they would really take care of these animals and make sure that they're in facilities where they don't get out and attack. They like to attack people on bicycles, women jogging down trails are vulnerable. Sometimes even home additions lose value because of pit bulls in the area. I have realtors calling me about that. So they're quite frankly, it's a breed that belongs in the zoo, but that's not a very popular statement. But I will say this, that any parent or grandparent that allows unrestricted play with a pit bull is committing child neglect.
Wow. Representative, we're going to change to a topic here that, perhaps some of our listeners have been inquisitive about, and they wanted to know more. We know that you had led a protest at the movie Monument Men, calling on OU to return Nazi stolen art back to its rightful Jewish owner. Could you tell us about this effort and how you got involved?
Yeah, this effort has gone on now for probably a year. And we've just concluded 16 PowerPoint presentations throughout Oklahoma. We just came back from Tulsa 2 days ago doing presentations there, trying to educate the public and galvanize the public to contact the University of Oklahoma and tell President Boren to voluntarily give up this art that's at the museum there. And there's probably other art I feel very strongly that was looted by the Nazis in World War II that's being displayed. Not only that, Jonathan, but they sell prints of those paintings. So OU is actually profiting from Nazi crimes today, and so I'm trying to rectify that and put Oklahoma on the right side of history.
I had two questions on this. How did OU get these paintings? And second, what was OU's response to your effort?
Well, they want to litigate it. They are making this. They want the courts to make a decision on this instead of giving it up voluntarily. The collection came from the Wesselhoft family. They bought 30 paintings from an art gallery in New York City, and they were all impressionistic paintings. It was valued at some $50 million, and they gifted that to Oklahoma. Well, OU took the paintings without doing the research, which is a violation. OU's Fred Jones Museum is a member of a national museum organization, and they're supposed to research every painting that comes their way to make sure that it wasn't looted by the Nazis, and OU failed to do that. So consequently, we have paintings there that were looted by the Nazis, and President Boren just needs to do the right and honorable thing and give those paintings up, because other universities have done that.
I see. Well, Representative, please keep us updated on that effort because we want to stay informed on this. But one of my last topics that I wanted to discuss was your Native heritage. I know that you are a citizen of the Potawatomi Nation and you serve as a legislator at the Potawatomi Nation. Could you indulge us a little bit on that?
Well, yes, the Citizen Potawatomi Nation is the only tribe in America that has a national legislature. We have 12 representatives. I represent the state of Oklahoma, but we have representatives, that represent the Northwest, the New England states, the Southeast, and other parts of America. So we come together about every other month or so with a meeting on a Friday night, and we can see each other on television monitors. And so we conduct resolutions. We pass resolutions. We also pass the budget for the entire nation. And so, yes, I've been doing that for a number of years. It's a 4-year term, and fortunately, we do not have term limits. So I'm actually running again this next summer. So hopefully, I'll be reelected to another 4-year term. But that's been something that I feel very good about, serving our tribe and our nation, because a lot of the things that we do at the tribal level gives Oklahoma tremendous benefits, as far as Oklahoma doesn't have to pay for a lot of medical procedures, glasses, hearing aids, wheelchairs. I could go on and on, that we provide our own people.
Wow. Well, we wish you'd continue success on your race and your election there in the Potawatomi Nation. We know that you have had plenty of experience and plenty of time to evaluate the Potawatomi Nation. What is the biggest issue facing our native Potawatomis?
Well, it's the same with every tribe. We have alcoholism is a plague on Indian tribes, and so we still combat that. Poverty is still an issue, not near as much as it is in reservations. The Indians in Oklahoma have really prospered a lot, and they've diversified. They not only have gaming, but they have grocery stores. My particular tribe, we have several banks that we own. We have filling stations, grocery stores, golf courses. I mean, you name it. So we're hoping that the tribes will diversify more and more and get away from gaming and get into more private enterprises, because that's where the money really flows in, and we can use that money to benefit our tribal members, and that way the state doesn't have to come in and do the services that are needed for alcoholics and for other people that are struggling with poverty issues. So that's always been an Indian issue. Obesity is another one. And so these are things that we have to really work hard at. And we're doing that. We're giving out so many scholarships now and helping Indians go to college. So I really feel good what our tribe is doing.
Wonderful. Going back to the Oklahoma legislature, in your final year, what efforts do you want to see come to fruition before you term limit out?
Well, I had a bill last year. It was controversial, but it was well supported by the most conservative element of the House and the most liberal. I had ACLU supporting me, and I had Tea Party supporting me. I mean, who else came up with a bill that unites ACLU and the Tea Parties and Republicans who are moderate?
That's very impressive.
That had to do with the drone legislation. Right now, agencies that are law enforcement can target you for surveillance with a drone without your knowledge. And I think that's not right. I think if you're going to target somebody for surveillance, that you need to have a warrant to do that. And that's what my legislation called for. And so I'm trying to get that through a committee right now. The chairman won't hear it. So I'm trying to get the bill moved this next session to a chairman that will hear it, like Jason Murphy. And so it's just the Fourth Amendment. You have a right of privacy, and a drone has no business spying on you unless you are potentially a criminal. And if they have any evidence that says that Jonathan might be growing, marijuana down on the farm or whatever, that's fine. Call the judge. They're on call 24 hours a day. They'll issue a warrant, and then you can go out there with your drone and spy on Jonathan.
Really?
Otherwise, leave Jonathan alone because he's an American citizen protected by the Fourth Amendment, and you must not spy on him. That's all my bill does.
Well, thank you for championing that. That will be a tremendous success, and we're wishing you the best on that too. You know, we have about a minute or two left, and I know that you said earlier that you are looking for a university to enroll in to complete another master's in, and you were discussing some of the works that you want to write and get published. Could you tell us a little bit about perhaps one or two of your pieces?
Well, I have 5 stories that are related about an Indian boy that grew up in the 50s in Oklahoma. And so I'm trying, that's one manuscript, that's one book.
That's interesting.
But I have several other manuscripts that stand on their own and could be books someday. But again, I need an agent. I need to get my skill level higher. And I think that this master's program will help me do that. And so hopefully my last career, after the political one and after the military one, I can be a professional writer. But again, that only happens if God opens the doors, it blesses me, and I hope that He does. I'm going to do my part, and then I hope the Lord will help me with His part.
Yes. Well, I think no matter which side of the aisle that you're on, or whether you're left or you're right, I think that people will look upon you and your tenure in office, and they will see your tenaciousness and your strong spirit to serve Oklahoma and help our folks out. And so we thank you for that, and we salute your service to the Oklahoma legislature and to your Potawatomi Nation as well.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure visiting with you tonight.
You're very welcome. And please come back on sometime and fill us in on some of your legislation. And I'd like to talk more about some of these issues.
I will do that.
Thank you so much, sir, and we appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan.
Folks, that has been Representative Paul Wesselhoft. He is a state representative in the Oklahoma legislature, as well as a legislator in the Potawatomi Nation. Folks, I want to remind you that tomorrow night we will have on Oklahoma State Representative candidate Jason Sansone. He will be weighing in on the issues. Also, we will have on Justin Wright and Jonathan McLinn from ThunderOpEd.com to give us our weekly Thunder basketball report and sports analysis. Folks, thank you so much for listening. This has been Oklahoma Voice, and I'm Jonathan Clour. Good night.
This has been Oklahoma Voice with Jonathan Clour. Tune in Monday through Friday night at 7 p.m. on the TuneIn Radio app, by live streaming at KTLV.com, or by radio on station 1220 AM.
KTLV AM 1220 concludes its broadcast day. For information on programming, operations, and sales, please check out our website at KTLV.com. This is KTLV, Midwest City, Oklahoma City.